So I think I'm the one person on the stage who kind of grew up in both places. So my family moved to the U.S. when I was 8. We moved to the Bronx from India, and I guess I thought of myself as New York. Well, I mean, the whole time I graduated high school there. I wasn't really sure what I was. I was just in New York like everybody else, and so I visited Raleigh on a spring break. Did not go to Daytona. I just stopped here, and I just felt immediately like this was my home. So the city that I grew up in India is a small, modern city called Chandigarh, and it was designed, I thought, by Le Corbusier, the French architect. And last year, before my husband, dad, and I went to India, I realized or learned that the original architect was actually from Raleigh. So I had a premonition, I suppose, or like there was a connection here in the way the place felt. I wandered a mile away and found a farmer's market that looked so much like the farmer's market in India, except everybody had tables and weren't sitting on the ground. And the buildings, I don't know, the size of the place, the climate, and I just then found all the Indian markets that were right here. So I couldn't imagine not being here. I think I was, I was just graduated college, and I felt like the city had potential, and I felt like I had potential, and we were kind of in the same place. So I really, it always has felt like home. I got to travel a lot because I lived here, but I always wanted to come back home to Raleigh.
I believe we're recording this, and you should save. I hate when people tell me what I should do. I would suggest that you might want to save that audio, because that, when you write your book, that's a great introduction. It's beautifully put. Or hangs light in this room, buoyant in this room, is what's the possibility of an event like this? What good comes of this? I mean, you see and be seen. There's a collegiality in the kitchen. I stepped into the kitchen just before we stepped downstairs, and there's an ease between y'all, a joy amongst y'all. But in a bigger picture sense, in a kind of change the world sense, what's possible with events like this?
Well, this events become very personal. I know these events get larger and larger, and more people come to them. But the bigger it gets, and the more often we do it, the more personal it feels. And for me, I think all of us here, the South has accepted us. We're successful. Our businesses are here. We're raising our families here. We're acclaimed. We're celebrated. And yet for me, when somebody asks me where you're from, there's a hesitation when I say, I'm from the South. And that hesitation is what we're trying to remove from the conversation. And I realized that the issue wasn't the South not claiming me, it was me claiming the South, feeling like a foreign object. And for the sake of future generations of people that look like us, not just Indians, but Vietnamese and Koreans and any diaspora that comes here, that's the South we're hoping to evolve into. When I lived in California, I never hesitated to say I'm a Californian, and nobody raised an eyebrow quizzically because I looked like I could be a Californian. But to one day look like I could be a Southerner, any of us on the stage, is what this conversation's about and what we're hoping to do. My daughter also moved here when she was 2, and she's now 16. And I hope for South where one day she says she's from the South proudly. Not, of course, acknowledging that there's a complicated history. But as Vish said, every region's got a complicated history. And you can't let that stand in the way of wanting to move forward and progress where you live. So inspiring people that look like us, that live here, work here, that have been accepted here, to raise their hands and be counted is what I hope that comes out of this. At the very least, I think we have good food.
And when you run for political office, that's the thing to play back and listen to and make your stump speech.
For me, coming here so much about just honestly the love that I have for everybody that's sitting right on both sides of me, to come and be able to celebrate them and each other. I get sentimental about it. It's very emotional to listen to Meryl. Like this morning, I asked the question. I said, you know, Meryl, how many employees do you have, and how many people do you employ? And he said 230. And it was just this beautiful moment for me to know that we are impacting the South, right? We are contributing in big ways to the South as well. And so even for us, for me, you know, to be here and see everything that everyone is accomplishing, it's such a sense of pride. I don't know how else to describe it. It's just really a tremendous sense of pride that it's very sure to be here in Chidi's space and see everything that she's doing, and to watch Maneet be this public figure and make us all look so amazing. It's just, for me, I feel pride. I feel pride sitting with these amazing people that I get to call family and friends. And my Browns, yeah.
Is that the first time you've used that My
Yes,
Browns
my
thing?
Browns, first time. So it's very empowering and it's powerful, and I think I leave here very inspired by them, by all of you who come here and embrace us for what we bring to the table. So thank you. Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
Else care
To me, this is like Thanksgiving. This is like the family getting together. I mean, literally, the kitchen is incredible. There is Bollywood music going on in the background. All of us are dancing while we are working. The comfort, the ease of working with each other is something which is so priceless. But what I also really appreciate the fact is that ethnic food, for the longest time, I mean, Indian food was $8.95 all you can eat buffet with like a layer of oil on top of the food, and once you've eaten that food, you probably wouldn't be eating for the next 2 or 3 days. And the reason was because the people who were making that was a means to an end. It wasn't the passion which went into it. What I love about all of us is that there is passion and then there is pride in this beautiful ancient cuisine. And the fact that there is so much of commonality between Southern ingredients and Southern techniques and Indian food, that just seeing what everybody is making is so invigorating. Every time I leave, I mean, I always say this, like, brown in the South is good for my soul, and it is good for, like, just ideas, like, wow, like, what are you guys, this is amazing. So I think, yeah, that's what makes this so special for me.
But I also do hope that we don't end up being a novelty of sorts, right? So that's also
that is the aim, to stop
to
being
stop being the other, or yes.
I'll just add one really quick thing to this. What makes me feel really good about this gathering is we are all from different parts, and we all grew up speaking a different language and eating food that was quite different from each other's food. But here, we have come together, and that's the other part of this region that I really admire, that it has brought us together. In 2 years, we've become such close friends that I can, any one of us can pick up a phone or send a text message if we need help anytime. So that's a great thing.
Or when we are sending jokes to each other.
Right.
Which is non-stop. when the thread starts, it doesn't stop.
I think it also has to do with language. And though you mentioned that we don't really speak the language, we have enough common words. And the first time that we were in the kitchen together, I thought, wow, we're speaking food language in our mother tongues, and I've never gotten to do that except with my mother and my family. So it was a really poignant kind of moment for me. Like, oh, I never thought I could be in a kitchen with other chefs and we could call cumin jira, and everybody would know what we're talking about.
And we actually make fun, so we have different dialects and different languages and different accents all over India, and so we actually make fun of each other's accents.
I mean, I'd say it's not an accident that we all ended up in the South. I mean, there's 5 other chefs upstairs, that are also from here. We're not in LA, we're not in New York, we're not in Boston, we're not where you think we'd be. We're in the South, and there's a reason for that. I mean, it's been spoken so eloquently to me too. When we arrived here with a family, we felt this is home. And there's a lot of commonalities between growing up in India and being in the South. There's a long, deep history. There's a culinary history. There's a care and attention to ingredients. There's making the most out of the least. These are things we grew up with also. And coming here and seeing them, it was instantly comfortable and familiar to be in the South. When I drive back towards Asheville and see the Blue Ridge Mountains, there's a feeling that not just this is home, that I've been here before. And that's why we choose to be here.
So I didn't prepare y'all for this question, but I got a mic. I was thinking about the title of your book, Asha, My Two Souths. And as you're all working chefs and restaurateurs, tell us a dish that you've conceived while behind your stove that speaks to the two Souths you claim. Speaks to the Indian subcontinent, speaks to the American South. A dish that came from, maybe it's your hot chicken pakora, maybe it's, that was the dish I was thinking
You just
about.
answered my question. You stole my answer.
But we don't know how that came to be.
No, but it's so fun. I mean, the hot chicken pakora. I mean, Nashville hot chicken is a religion over there, and we just call it the Ode to Nashville, Chauhan's hot chicken pakora. But also beyond dishes, I think it's also the concept of the meat and three. Right, the meat and three was something that I had never heard of, before I came to Nashville, and when I saw what the meat and three is and how it is served, which is pretty much any meal in the entire world. I mean, that's how we grew up with. So we just call it like Chauhan's Ode to Nashville meat and three, and it is a rice and 3 sides which change every day. So that's pretty much what it is.
For me, it was, I just love the idea of introducing spice into the Southern pantry. So, it's not one particular dish per se, but just bringing that infusion of whether it's cardamom or black pepper or cumin into different, like my mother's carrot cake, right? It has black pepper and clove and cardamom in it. So I love the idea of being able to introduce spice into the Southern pantry. Like, it excites me.
That carrot cake is not to be missed if you've not had it. I see people nodding in the audience who have had it. Talk to them about it.
You can order it still, right?
Not really.
I mean, in my restaurants, we do Indian street food. So when I got here and opened the restaurant, we did what any Indian street food vendor does: use what's at hand. So we still cook what we cook. We cook Indian street food chaat, but there's green tomatoes and kale and okra and sweet potatoes and ramps instead of scallions. And these things just found themselves automatically coming into the pantry and being woven in. And I think instead of trying to come up with a dish that tried to speak to both places, it just organically, naturally happened, where the ingredients that were around us sort of became part of Chai Pani's story. So,
yeah, we cook very seasonally, and that's the only way that makes sense. So most of like what you said, the vegetables are from either the farmer's market or your local farm that just drops stuff off. But I mean, there's so many commonalities. Like, my mom used to make upma when we were sick. So it's just a rice porridge, but in the summer we use grits and fresh corn, and sometimes we'll put shrimp on it. And we eat corn flatbread with greens, and we do sort of a fritter version of that with. There's like every season we kind of have riffs on stuff, but it is about the ingredients that,
I think for
we
me
have here.
Yeah, the biggest ones I had was when Jonty had come to Cardamom Hill, and I served him my mother's fried chicken on Low Country waffles with a spiced jaggery, melted down jaggery, and I'd never actually had cane syrup before. I just knew jaggery. And after he left, he actually sent me a bottle of cane syrup. And it was like, whoa!